content over everything.
So it becomes a cultural concept.
Yeah, Japan, just to add to what he's saying, Japan is a collectivistic culture. So it's about putting the group's needs before your own, rather than the other way around.
In a Western society, there are a collusion of cultures. The idea is everyone's coming from different backgrounds, different and therefore different values, different interests. So therefore, it will be difficult for the corporation to pick which side do we go for, like, or the society itself, which direction do we go in. Of course, everyone wants prosperity, everyone wants to, live a good life. But like you said, Japan has that cultural cohesion, which allows them to pick a direction and say, yeah, this is the better for our society.
Yeah.
Like I said, here people like that. You see cultural divisions, interest divisions, like working in a corporation. As an individual, you might have a different interest compared to the corporation interest. So then there's many questions that are being asked at the same time. So that's why I would say.
I'd have to argue. I'd have to be a bit more critical of that, because not because I think you're wrong, but because again, you didn't ask what's the opposite of being a collective culture. That's an individualistic culture. And in the UK, I mean, yes, it's definitely a mishmash of lots of different cultures, but if there's anything you can say about the UK, we're not collectivistic. It's putting myself before others and my interests first. Yes, it's selfish, I get it, but that's a very large part of what individualism is. It's about morality applying to you as an individual rather than morality applying to you as part of a larger group.
More of a moral, in terms of responsibility-wise, you have to be more moral as an individual, because if you have a less of a collective understanding, it's based on your own individual discretion. The idea is you have to have your own moral code, your own ideas.
Yes.
Whereas if a society is more cohesive, they understand. They don't have to be told, this for the best interest.
Well,
of people.
no, it's kind of the opposite. In a collectivist society, morality tends to be much harsher. That the cost you have to bear is higher than if you were living in an individualistic society. The costs you have to bear are smaller, because all you are really accountable to is yourself. As long as you don't mess up other people's rights and whatever, then you're okay. But in a collectivistic culture, this idea that no, you are part of a group and you have to behave in a way that benefits the group. Your needs are secondary.
So exactly. So, but here, I would say people are more accepting of disruption. I would say
That's new society.
Yes, we're comparing Japanese versus English society.
Like Western versus Eastern.
Yes.
like you're saying, in terms of I would say, with, like you said, the idea of.
Can I?
So can you finish, and I'll let you come in.
Yeah.
Yes.
The idea is, I'm saying, like you said, with the Japanese culture, it's like the idea is people that the collective interests are more important than the individual interests, of course. But the idea is, I'm saying here, because you are an individual, you have more room. It's based on your discretion. Like I said, the idea is you can disrupt here if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. Like you could come here and I can start, egging places up, whatever, causing disruption, trying to get my point across.
Yep.
But the idea is, as an individual, people wouldn't be as, I would say, less backlash in terms of it was over there, because there, like you said, it's less tolerated. People would say, what you're doing, you're going against the so-called status quo or anything like that. Here, people are, like I said, on the fence. The idea is people don't know if they want to be full for the collective or for the individual. So the idea is based on your discretion as an individual, I would say here. So of course you want the interest for everyone. No one wants to live in a chaotic society. But the idea is people are, torn over the direction. The idea is they don't know what's right and what's wrong. Should I think about myself? Should I think about the people? People don't think about me. So too many questions are arising, I would say. So it's too, which are not being answered.
But do you think generally people think that way here? Because I don't think they're thinking at the same depth that you are. I think they're living much simpler, self-interested lives.
Yes. But the idea is, I would say, not necessarily on the surface, you won't see it. But like I said, there is a point in which that question will arise, whether it's now, whether it's a year from now, whether it's eventually the question will arise. Like I said, I just think about it now because, like I said, I'm just at that stage when I think about these things. But eventually, I think everyone asks themselves that question. The idea is, in the society you're living in, do I fit in? Do I stand out? Do I go here? Do I go there? So the question is, if you don't have like I said, that's why the idea of, like I said, institutionally having that, meshing people into that the middle is more safer. The idea is, if you're in the middle, you're less likely to ask more questions. Whereas if you're on either end, you're more likely to ask more because you're having a different perspective. So I would say the more middle, like you said, Japan have more of that middle class.
They have a massive middle class.
Exactly. Yeah. So creating that giant middle class allows them to, necessarily the people on the edges are less hurt, more or less. So the idea is, if those people are trying to infiltrate with different ideologies or different perspectives, they will be more hushed down quicker, I would say.
One question: What exactly is the middle? What's in the middle? What's either side of it?
Either side, like I was saying, in terms of the middle, it's like
Nice one.
the general, like let's say, okay, in society,
from
there
America,
are main jobs like corporations,
nice.
I don't know,
I
standard
think
jobs,
font type is
just normal society jobs, isn't it? The idea is, but
I don't know what
there
the
are people,
font is,
like let's say,
but
who are considered
it's nice.
outcasts of society, like people who are famous.
I actually had to pay duties on it. From the
Like
States.
corporations that have no interest in you.
Oh no, like 2 or
So
3 pounds.
therefore, you are no different from those other people. Let's say you are geniuses.
Probably
or
be a bit
smart.
bigger.
They don't fit as well because they don't have a standard of acceptance.
It's beautiful.
Because I would say
It's
it's
something
something of
nice.
authority. The idea of people who have a difficult authority
دلع نفسك
are
شوي.
less likely to be,
Yeah,
less
I'll take a little walk around.
Yeah, yeah.
more likely to interfere, I would say. So the idea is, I was saying.
You're talking about-
All right, yeah, I was saying the idea is people in the middle, they're more likely to just roll with it. You know, if you're taught to be indifferent, the idea is mostly if you're in the middle, it means you have to be indifferent. Like let's say the cohesive mindset. You know, it's like a drop of water compared to a cup of water. The idea is a cup of water, you can't pick out an individual drop penny. So the idea is if you are meshed together, you are one unit.
Yeah, it's more cohesive and it leads to a better society in terms
But I
of
was saying on a society
safety.
perspective, on a
Yeah,
society perspective, it's more within the best interest of society if everyone has that one.
it is, but it does. Do you want to say something? It does pose a big dilemma for the person, the individual, who wants to succeed and who wants to.
Because I think initially, everyone thinks on an individualistic mindset. So after a while, once you hear about the collective interest, then you start to align your interest with the collective.
Because the biggest problem that a lot of these collectivist societies have, like Japan, for example, is their inability to innovate. If you know anything about Japanese culture, and I know quite a bit, they cannot innovate. A lot of the progress they have is they take innovations from outside and they improve upon them. Right?
Why do you think that is?
And that's precisely because of the collectivism that you cannot, for example, tell your boss, this is not really a good idea. Yeah, because you're going against the grain. If he's your boss, even if it's a crap idea, it's a great idea because he's your boss. Right.
So it's about the collective mindset. So
Whereas an American would say, you know what? Even if it's a janitor in a building, if he has a good idea, I'm going to take it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to, make something out of it. And that's why you have, I think, more innovation, let's say, from a culture that's like Western, I think, like especially the United States, than other societies.
Yeah, it's a fair point, definitely. Yeah, that's my point. So the idea is there are pros and cons to both sides. Because the idea
There
is, I would
are,
say
there are.
Japan, I don't know about necessarily the crime rate, but I would say
No, it's
lower.
very low.
Exactly.
Very, very low.
So cohesive.
I've left my laptop, Mac laptop in cafes, and I could leave for 3 hours, come back and still there. Yeah.
Whereas in Western society,
He just
it's a
doesn't
different
have it,
case,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would say cohesive have pros and cons in both ways. So
I think finding the right balance is good. I think the American society is probably too individualistic. I think the Japanese society is too collectivist.
it's about finding a space
Something
between
in
that.
between that.
Do you
Yeah.
think anywhere in the world expresses that now at the moment? Would you say?
Maybe Switzerland, something like that. Yeah, Switzerland.
If you're trying to find the middle between being too individual and being too collective, what would that middle be? Wouldn't then that just bring everybody into the middle as what you're saying?
Yeah, it would create another dilemma. Yeah,
Create
exactly.
Another middle, yes.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
idea is this middle would be more in the best interest of everyone. Like the spectrum would be more diverse, I would say. Like in terms of, like you said, innovation is allowed, whereas innovation that doesn't,
Disrupt the
exactly.
society to the extent
Exactly.
where
Not to the point where people are losing jobs and losing
revolutions and the people. Yeah,
Exactly. Here is more of, people are losing their jobs, like let's say corporations, liquidate. People losing their jobs, people are financially becoming.
can't pay the mortgage,
So
get
it
divorced.
creates-
Yeah.
So it creates a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
So the idea is.
I think personally we could do with a bit more collectivism, a little bit more in terms of that in the UK. But I think we could, in some other areas, we could do with more individualism.
So do you think it's more of the institution's responsibility to do that, or do you think it's the?
I think the institutions have a role to play, I think, but also I think upbringing. And a lot of people don't like to talk about families. A lot of families, unfortunately, they don't really take care of their children in the right way. And like mothers and fathers, they don't really pay enough attention to them where they could. In terms of, my child might not be good at study, but he might be good at sports. Or
Yeah, the idea of course.
yeah, because if you leave everything up to the institutions, it's not fair. They just don't have the money, they don't have the time, and they don't have the incentive either. Yeah. So it has to be, I think, it has to be on the family level, it has to be on the individual level and the institution level.
So, like, let's say from a nuclear level, like family-wise.
Yeah.
like in terms of the child more or less, the parent, of course, you are in a collective, like, let's say a family, a collective unit.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the mindset is coming from an external source. So let's say if the parents take their responsibility, social media will take that new role. So they might have idols, they might have I'm aspiring to be like so and so.
Yep.
So the idea is they will become an individual just by thinking, I want to be like that individual. Even though millions of children are thinking the same thing, it's still an individual mindset. They're not thinking let's collectively because
work for something.
Exactly. Because the idea is, let's say if I'm a musician, I'm an individual. The idea is I'm thinking about my own prosperity. I'm not thinking about the prosperity of the music industry.
Sure.
Exactly. I'm thinking about my own interests. The idea is it becomes a very, very all about me. But like you said, the idea is not everyone can go to, like I said, the exclusivity plays a part as well. Not everyone can become a $1 million selling musician. It just doesn't make sense. So the idea is most people will fall off that, let's say, the path to that. Just can't have a backlash. People will say, I'm not good at this, or I'm not good at that. So it can make them question themselves. But the idea is if there is a collective, I don't know if anybody exists. That's why it's hard. The idea is everything's based on the only collective concepts we have are corporations. Everything else is an individual.
Well, the family is definitely a collective institution. So is governments, the army, the police. These are all collective institutions. I wouldn't just say it's collectivism comes from corporations. I think that would be misunderstanding.
From a societal level, yes. I'm saying many of them made, let's say, even like you said, military, hospitals. Yes, there are, but like I said, they're all in a societal interest. Like, so the idea is, if someone's a nurse and someone's a doctor, they have the same goal to make these patients healthy, to help these people. They have the same goal. I'm saying, as a society, how do you hold on to these values of, without harming people? Of course, you don't want people to be hurt. You don't want people to become financially, dependent. You don't want people to. So the idea is, how do you create that, but also give them, like a role, like without saying, okay, here's your job and just do it. That's it. Like be another ball in the chain or whatever. Like another part, a cog in the system.
So now that we've identified the problem, what do you think the solutions should be?
Well, like I said, the solution is very complex because these are discussions which are very uncommon. I would say, like you said, when you're in the middle, these discussions don't come up. People are not saying, there's an issue with this, there's an issue with this. It's more or less just brush under the carpet.
I think what you tend to find is that with a lot of people, regardless of their social standing, economical standing in the society they're in, they just do what other people do.
I can ask you a question. In Japan, is there migration? How is their migration policy?
The migration is very little in Japan. It's very, very little. I think they accepted 11 refugees last year, just 11. Yeah, and that was too much.
So how do you think that affects them in terms of their side? Do you think it works in their favor, or do you think it works against them?
If you look at things if you look at it from the point of view of crime, for sure it's in their favor. Because with mass immigration, the crime does spike, right? Crime level does spike up. Not violent crime, but petty crime, right? But if you think about it in terms of advancement of the culture, they're at a massive stagnation. They cannot innovate anything. They cannot bring anything new. They cannot introduce anything new. They cannot think in new ways. Immigration helps you do that. We can do that here because, not only because of immigration, but also to do the mentality. But immigration helps us do that, I think. So there's good and bad. There's good and bad to it,
But what would you boil it all down to? Is it a question of morality, respect?
I would say here you're held more accountable. I would say that when you're an individual, accountability plays a big part because you're basing on your own individual moral. Let's say someone leaves a bag there. It's based on my moral discretion whether I want to take it or not. Whereas in a society where everyone's more or less the same as me, I wouldn't feel compelled to do that because I think these people might judge me or they might know me. But if I'm in a society which is very mixed, it's based on my own discretion as an individual. So the idea is
more like might is right.
Exactly. The onus is more on you, I would say, in the individualistic society. Like I said, that might be too much responsibility at the same time because the individual putting that much responsibility on them and saying, you might not have no money but don't steal. It's a very, very problematic question, isn't it? To ask someone, if someone doesn't have money and they need food, if the society is not providing or the people are not giving them money to give them food, what other options are you really giving the individual? So in terms of crime, of course, like we said, crime rates play a role as well. But I would say there is no alternate. Like I said, if the society does not take the responsibility and the individuals don't take the responsibility, then it kind of becomes a judgmental concept. The idea
Yeah.
society judges them, the individual judges them, and like I said, that's what creates more disruption and more
Sure.
segregation and more of these issues.
So essentially what Japan have done is they've sacrificed the idea of progress for a logical order that works.
How do you think that's played out for them? Though? Do you think
As I mentioned, when it comes to things like crime, it's very, very good. It has worked very well.
Level, like
On an
Japan's very
economic
well,
level,
I would say, like they're not. Economically
no, they're not, but they're stagnating, and they were the second largest economy. Now they're third, behind China. And if you compare China to Japan, very similar cultures, Confucian, quite traditional, but the Chinese don't mind innovation. They like innovation. They like change. They have a very kind of, they're willing to sacrifice certain things in order to progress. Whereas Japan wants that social cohesion, and they're not willing to sacrifice that
So how do you think that came about? Do you think that's because of the military history or anything like that? Like
I think it's just more to do with. I think it's just more to do with a sense of it's really when it comes down to it, mythology. Like they're connected. They feel like everyone's connected to the emperor, and that the emperor comes from a sun god, and that
so it's that cultural understanding.
it's a cultural thing. So it's it has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. It just depends. It's about, are you conscious of it? Are you conscious of what the drawbacks are and what the benefits are, and are you happy with it? That's the question, really. Even on the individual level, if you're happy with it, then I think that's fine. And I think for most Japanese people, they are happy with it.
Then how does that help? Do they have like diverse communities, or is it just?
It's very monolithic. Throughout the whole country you go, the food is the same, the shops are the same, the mentality is the same.
Like poverty, let's say, like they have low
No,
poverty.
there's nobody who's poor in Japan. It's very, very hard to find people who are poor because the jobs are so plentiful. It's so easy to get a job.
Can't take away everything from your humanity.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
What you gonna do
Listen.
about this?
I don't even listen to ITV. Exactly.
What are you gonna do about the Lib Dems and the Green Party?
I don't listen to ITV.
You are an every head of which means you're bringing something else.